Hi, I'm Grace Lynch. Welcome to my channel. Today's topic is an idea I'm calling dynamic safety. Um, this is going to be one of the videos that is on the road towards developing a notion of process oriented language rather than object oriented language, which leads to context. So, process oriented language, sort of the sense of it, is it's an approach to building meaning, expressive meaning, and integrative meaning in a way that the part of the struggle of being who a person is, their perspective ongoingly as they experience being inside the struggle physically, like in real time, is part of the meaning that they assign to whatever word they choose to express it. And that may be a very confusing idea. So then I'll give you this example by talking about how for my own case, I needed to find a more useful sense of what safety was. The reason for this is because safety, in a naive sense, is simply that instinct in a person that when if the desk exploded and everything caught on fire, I would be getting up out of my chair and leaving the apartment before I even thought of anything. It would move in me. But that is to say that it's a force in me that over which I lack agency at an ultimate level. I can't really say that it's a tool at my disposal because it's there to ensure that I continue to exist even when my brain can't catch up. So based on that, and one of the big practices that I had to develop in trying to rebuild my sense of language and meaning many years ago was that some reasoning that I tried on for possibilities to explain to myself what I was experiencing with the aphasia and the different sensory modes, synesthesia. I didn't know I had that either. Autism, I didn't know I had that. But the ways I processed were inside those modalities. And in terms of trying to find an explanation for what I was experiencing, I would try explanations on, and I couldn't disqualify them logically, but if I couldn't apply them functionally to my life to give me agency about how to build my life and approach my life day to day, get through the day, if it didn't help the process that I was having to survive, it was a useless idea anyway. So some ideas I disqualified because I could find logical exceptions to them, but some ideas I disqualified because they weren't practical. So it became a practice that an idea about the meaning of something, it not only has to make logical sense to me, which was very important, um, otherwise I would feel like it's horseshit, but it also had to make practical sense to me. It had to give me agency. It had to be a useful idea. Some of the ideas that I had to not actively work with was that of being dead or crazy. Not because I could logically discount them as possibilities that I was inside of, because there's no direct definitions of these, but because applying them to my life didn't give me agency to do anything useful. It didn't help me get through the day better. It didn't help me understand myself better. It was sort of like a junk box, a sort of nondescript adjective that it's not really clear what function it serves. So yeah, so ideas had to make sense and be logical, but they also had to be useful. So as I was coming through brain rehab and reacquainting myself with language more actively when they added the clonidine in 2015, and this was 20 something years, 2015, so 1987, so 27 years after the original brain injury, then things like safety, it didn't give me much bang for the buck to have safety, a word, occupy my smaller language cache if I couldn't use it to help me functionally in my life. And over time, I found that it's got a much more useful way to think about it. Um, the three biggies that I had to deal with were aphasia, autism, and alcoholism or addiction, the three A's. So I find it kind of cool, like a weird coincidence on the universe's part or God's part, that he would give me all three, like the trifecta. Then I would have to find out how to be a person and all that. So, in any case, what I found as I started struggling with the meaning of these experiences was that, in terms of my alcoholism, as I was rebuilding language, but with the information that I had autism and these other issues, I quickly found that building the language wasn't, and then expressing it, wasn't welcome in the meetings because the meeting people who didn't struggle with these things considered them outside issues, even though it was usually a social norm, especially in open meetings, to, from my perspective, to talk about any fucking thing I wanted to. But, when I brought stuff up, they'd be like, oh, you need outside help and this, and they would decide for me what was okay for me to consider part of my alcoholism. So I stopped sharing that way. And then, so I had a form of alcoholism that I had to reckon with whether or not I could ever talk about it at meetings. I still had to deal with it just because it wasn't, socially popular. My autism was a form of neurodiversity that all autism is unique, and combined with the aphasia and the trauma was something that had never been experienced before, and certainly never been experienced before by me. So I didn't have any words for that because nobody could give me words for that, and I hadn't found them myself. Nobody had ever been to that planet before, so nobody found the words for the experience before. And the aphasia, I had never met anybody who'd experienced aphasia from an autistic and traumatized perspective. So my way of rebuilding language was a unique process as well. And the point in all of that is that all three of those experiences were unsettling and in some ways terrifying to me. And the trauma didn't pass. It wasn't an event. It wasn't a safety thing to get out of a burning house that I could get out of just by my safety mechanism reflexively kicking in and getting me out of my chair. In fact, years prior, I had found that no matter how hard that safety thing drove me to try to escape or fight or flight or flee or freeze, the horror of it continued. It continued past my body's ability to keep producing the adrenaline and cortisol, so that I didn't even get the benefit of that supercharged kind of I'm going to survive this, because all that ran its course, and then I was still right where I was. And so for me, I had to find a way to deal with unending trauma, or trauma that I couldn't get out of by a reflexive safety mechanism. And because the physical evidence was that I had survived and continued to survive, even if I didn't understand it, then I came to understand that safety is a much more useful concept. Yes, it's the reflexive little knee-jerk thing to get out of a burning building. But I found it's also, safety isn't really about keeping me alive. Safety is about keeping me me. So that through change, it's some kind of unerring guide that as I'm transformed through trauma or experience, whatever that is, that it's my body's way of connecting with my mind's effort to understand, to make sure that whatever new understanding I come to, whatever path I make, whatever purpose I find for myself, it resolves in something that I could express in the way I'm used to expressing myself, but also that allows me to be me in the way that I need to be me. And that's a physiological thing. And somehow my safety mechanism knows how to evolve me only in my direction. So I don't have to think about it. Whenever I make a choice, I'm not making a choice that is just anything's possible. I'm making a choice about anything's possible, provided that stepping into that, I'm still who I am. And that's something that is done for me. I don't know how to even consciously conceive of myself well enough to be intentional about it. But somehow, I always end up arriving at me again and doing that in a way that's unique to me. And so that has given me slowly over time the sense that safety is a dynamic ability inside a person that's physiologically based, and that it is possible, actually I do it all the time, to consider that my brain can become actively aware of this safety thing, and that awareness as a constancy can be a place of continuous meaning. It can become a personal absolute that is not cognitive, because the brain doesn't have to build it, and the body will continue to arrive a person at themselves in the way that they have to do that long before the brain catches up. And it's this that I study in my recovery from aphasia, alcoholism, addiction, and understanding my neurodiversity, my autism. So dynamic safety, it's a pretty fun idea. It's kind of weird to think about a word not as an idea, but as a process or a function of consciousness. So that getting to know language or equating with language is developing functional ability rather than static. But that's all.